Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Doctor to Doctor in the chat room. I am here with my special guest today, who you will hear from in just a moment. But first, I want to say to you guys, thank you for coming back every Saturday to hear and listen. And I enjoy all of the feedback that I get from you each week. As I usually say, please stay safe. Use those necessary precautions to stay safe and wear your mask. Make sure that you are physically distancing yourselves and not gathering in large crowds. And please, people, get tested. There are plenty of sites for testing. You can get antibody tests now, and make sure you do what you need to keep yourselves safe, keep your family safe, because we want everybody to stay here on this earth as long as possible. How about that? Our world is really in a bit of a tailspin, and it seems like everything that we are dealing with is somehow tied to politics. Let's just be candid about it. I feel like I am truly waiting to exhale. I'm waiting for a breather. We have had one occurrence after the other, and we are looking forward to having some new blood and some new people to move us in a different direction than where we've been. And that's where folks like my special guest today will come in. And I'm going to ask her, she was here on last week, and I'm going to ask her if she would just tell us a little bit about who she is from in this role, in this perspective, and then we'll just kind of jump in and just talk a little bit today. How are you, special guest and classmate?
And wonderful classmate. It's just good to see you. It's great to be with you again. I am Sybil Miller-Watkins, and I'm running for Tennessee State Senate District 26. And who am I? I am a Hardeman Countyan, born and raised in Bolivar. My mom, Lois Bernice Miller, who was a civil rights
Yeah,
fighting for everybody type of person. And I'm just excited to be from Bolivar.
yeah.
I now live in Fayette County with my husband, and we have 8 children, 8 grandkids, and I'm running for office because what I realized was that everyday people's voices were not being heard.
Mm.
And if nothing else, I can speak to kitchen issues, and because I've had to live them.
Mhm.
And I think that we need more diverse voices in Nashville to bring about the change that we all not only want to see, but want to be a part of. And so
Yeah.
that's why I'm running for state senate.
I mean, there's so many platforms. There are so many issues. We talked about the school reopenings on last week, and I want you to talk about that in detail today, in terms of your perspective. But I think the first thing I would like for you to do is just talk about the importance of voting. I really want to use this platform, if I can, to encourage people to get out and vote and, to exercise that right. Just talk about the importance of it because, as you know, there's so many people that think their votes don't count.
Well, the one thing I'll say is being a child of Bernice Miller's, the one thing that we knew was at 18, we had to register to vote. And that was kind of the culture when we were growing up.
Hmm.
Everybody registered at 18, and then you were expected to show up at the polls at the next election. What has happened is I believe people have become so disenfranchised, believing that politics don't touch them. When we understand that politics is all around you, politics decides if you get a new paved road, they decide where the street lights are going to be, how big your house can be if you built it, how much taxes you were going to pay, how much money your school system gets, how that money is spent in the school system. Everything that we do, from our sales tax when we go and buy that Coke and bag of chips, to the property taxes that we pay on our homes,
Hmm.
to the streets we drive on, the cars we drive, the type of air we breathe, the quality of the water we drink. All of that is determined by a politician, which
Mm-hmm.
is why it is so important that we vote. And I am, like you, classmate, encouraging more people to get involved with the political process, to
Mm-hmm.
be more civically minded, to complete the census, because we know that the census will dictate how much money our communities can get. That also funds our schools and things of that nature. So not only do we need to complete our census, but we need to register to vote. In Tennessee, it's quite simple because you can go online and you can vote. It takes about 5 minutes. You can go to your election commission and get the application. But why do you vote? Because everything that we tend to complain about,
Hmm.
pothole in the street.
I was about to say that. Yes. When you talking
Yes,
about the
yes.
roads, I was like, woo, please
Who go?
go.
Look, they need to fix this. Well, that's a politician.
Yeah.
To how much taxes you pay on your groceries. It's all political. And if we could just get people to understand that, and your vote is your currency. And
Mm,
if it's your currency, then you want to make sure that you get your money's worth. So you want to cast that vote so that you can determine how your money is spent, that currency for your exchange. You say, I want to elect this person because they say they're going to do whatever it is that you want them to do. And if they're addressing your kitchen table issues, then you want to make sure that they are your elected official. But you have a say, and one vote combined with 10,000 other votes
hmm
can make a change.
Yeah. Um, when I had my dad on the show a few months back, and one of the things that he talked about was, when somebody asks you for your vote, you know, ask them what do you plan to do, and if they
Mhm.
tell you, hey, I'm gonna go to Nashville or Washington or wherever, and I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that, probably not your person, because you have to be able to work across party lines,
Mhm.
because it's going to take, I don't know how many are in the Senate, but
$33.
it's going to take the majority of that 33,
Mhm.
to get something passed, right?
Right.
So talk about how you expect to uh, do that and work across party lines, because I know we're in a really tensed,
Mhm.
different type of climate here right now.
Yeah. Well, I believe if you approach situations with bringing a solution to a challenge, and then other people can bring their solutions to the challenge. One thing that's missing in our body politic today is that discussion. Do you remember debates?
Yeah.
How this side would be talking to this side, and you'd be like, okay, what they're saying doesn't make any sense. I agree with that. Well, we don't even have those debates anymore.
Mhm.
Everyone is so entrenched in their side. So the one way that I know, and I am positive that I can bring about collaboration, debate, and then solutions, is that I've done it all my life. I'm one of eight, and I had 8 kids, and getting everybody to eat the same dinner. Now, that seems very simple and very simplistic, but
Mhm.
also on the school board, we have to have discussions, and we make very hard decisions, budgetary ones. Who's getting paid, who's getting the raise, who's not getting the raise. So when I go into those school board meetings, then I do try to be the person that can bring everyone together. And that's what you need. You can't be so entrenched on what you think and what you feel. You come to the table with that, but the goal is, and my favorite scripture is Isaiah 1 and 17,
Mhm.
is to learn to do right, seek justice, and to defend the oppressed. So if what we're talking about is about justice, and that's economic justice, educational justice, racial justice, all of it is about justice. And we're working to help the least of them, because if we help the least of them, then all of us will be helped.
Yeah.
So I just believe that if you come in a spirit of wanting to make a change and wanting to make life better for Tennesseans, then you can sit across the table from anyone and come to a conclusion that will be beneficial to the citizenry of our state.
Yeah, and that's definitely what we're missing in our political environment right now. You know, people
Mhm.
able to come together and come to the table together, and as you say, not being so engrossed in what political side they're on, and doing, the greater good for the people.
Yeah.
I know that education is a top issue for you. I happen to know that you were one of the tops in our class. Umpteen years ago.
Umpteen.
Yeah. So talk about education for a moment.
Education. Well, the one thing that we can truly say about education for 2020 is that it's looking very different than any of us would have ever expected. And so, what we have to have when we were thinking about laws and guidelines and things like that of education is someone who can be very quick on their feet and bring solutions. Once again, I'm talking a lot about solutions to the table. Knowing that I said once before, I have a son who was born when the Twin Towers fell, and then he graduated during a pandemic.
Yeah.
And so being able to carry him through that and seeing education through the eyes of our children and our educators. The one thing that we have got to get better at is making sure we have our educators at the table, because they are the ones who have to fulfill the duty that we're putting them up to. They have to have a say in how education works in our state. And so as a school board member, I do go and I ask their opinions and I get their reactions about things that are happening. And it is amazing the insight that they have. So making sure that all stakeholders are at the table, educators, parents, and even students. They have a lot to say about education, but I do know that education is going to look very different, and having someone there who understands education, the funds it takes to have a solid to provide a solid education to our students, as well as the personnel, and making sure that we have great people tenured in our state to
Yeah.
lead our children through whatever they're going to need for the 21st century.
Yeah, because I don't care how smart you are. If you haven't been in the classroom, you really don't understand all the ins and outs, and that are tied to the decisions, the real tough decisions that need to be made about education overall, really. If you don't understand it, you got to go get that input. You got to go talk to the people that do, and you got to take heed to the information that they provide. You have to. Science and data, it matters. I hear.
Yes,
Uh,
yes, it does.
talk about it.
So, one thing that I have found out during the pandemic is how much it matters. Not that it matters, but it matters a lot. Being able to educate children safely in a sanitary situation, and having not only those students be comfortable, but have our educators, our teachers, and our administrators be comfortable as well. We have to listen to the science and data during this time of COVID-19. One of the metrics that we use here in Fayette County is the EPIC curve, which tells our communities whether or not they can go into our nursing homes, which is a very stringent metric, but it is widely accepted.
Mhm.
So if we're going to educate our children safely, keep them healthy, and yet educate them, then we've got to have some guidelines. And the fact that we don't have a statewide plan has put superintendents, I pray for superintendents, because it is that superintendent that had to really bring the proposed opening to the school board to get that approval. So superintendents are really deserving of our grace and compassion and prayers because of the decisions that they've had to make, whether they chose hybrid, virtual, or in person. We really need to be mindful of the decisions that they had to make without the benefit of having guidelines from our state. And that is a weight that I am sure that many of our superintendents feel.
Yeah. If you could step into the shoes of a superintendent right now in the state of Tennessee, based on the data and based on the numbers and the rise in the cases, what do you think your decision would be?
My decision would be the same decision I voted for here in Fayette County. Looking at the numbers and knowing where they were when we had to make the decision, I would be virtual.
Hmm.
Everyone would be remote learning. If the numbers were as they were in Fayette County and as they are in Tennessee, they're rising.
Yeah.
Everything is rising. I follow those numbers daily, and
Yeah.
and and you'll see plus 23 or plus 42
Right.
since yesterday.
Hmm.
So if everything is still rising, then we need to be mindful of what of the decisions that we're making.
Hmm. You talked a little bit last week about the CARES Act and those that funding and not necessarily being readily available, and how that impacts planning. Could you speak to that a little bit more? Because there again lies, something tied to really to politics because this is happening above. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, everything in a school system is contingent upon your budget.
Hmm.
So I can budget for the moon. If I don't have the moon in my bank account, I can't wish and hope and do a fictitious budgeting of money. So it has to be in the bank, um, so that we can be mindful of our district's money. Because one thing that not only at a school district level, but at a state level, budget is very important, and how you manage it matters to people, whether or not you have the funds to do what it is that you want to do. So we knew how much we were going to get, but you don't spend it. I don't order, we don't order the computers. We don't order the fogger machines, and they have a name. I just
Yeah.
I have to figure out what the name is. The machines that fog the classrooms
Yeah.
and make them,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So we don't order that until the funds are in our bank account. So having to wait on that, and then once we got the funds, everyone is placing the same order. Everyone is ordering the same Chromebook. Everyone is ordering the same laptop. So now you're in a silo where you have to wait your turn for your order to be filled.
Mm.
So it's a trickling effect. One thing affects another.
Hmm.
So not having the funds and knowing what the guidelines would be that the governor would be asking us for, definitely put a lot of districts behind the eight ball.
Yeah. And I think we touched on this a little bit when we were talking about the reentry into schools too. When you talk about planning, um, that there needs to be plans in place. We talked about the children that are, in homes that where they are being, possibly being abused, or children in homes where they don't really have access to food regularly, and being at school is when they eat.
Mhm.
um there's so much that goes into that planning, right? This is
Mhm.
why teachers are so important. This is why administrators in education are so important. Everybody needs to come to the table, and even our students need
Right.
to have a voice. Another really huge issue, when we start talking about voting and politics, is healthcare. Let's talk about healthcare right after we get back from break. We'll be right back on 94.7 FM. And we're back on 94.7 FM, and I am still here with Mrs. Civil Miller-Watkins, and she is running for state senate for District
26.
26. And when we left, we mentioned a little bit. We stopped with health education, but I said I wanted to talk about healthcare. So the governor has called a special session to talk about telehealth. And as we said, we're in a tailspin. Everything's looking different now. Talk about healthcare.
Well, the one thing that I believe that we all need to realize is because of where we are now with COVID-19, public health should be our priority.
Mm,
Because if you're not healthy, you can't go to school, you can't go to work, you can't do any of the things. So we can't separate opening schools, our economy, or anything from healthcare. Because without a healthy group of citizens that can go to school and go to work, as I said, then we won't have a functioning state. So the fact that now there is a special called meeting to talk about telehealth and telemedicine is where you can either get on your computer and or your phone, your mobile device, your smartphone, and you can have a discussion with your doctor. Your appointment basically takes place on a on an electronic device, pardon me.
So
So the
simple. Let me
uh-huh.
just interject and say this. I've had one telehealth appointment during this time.
Mhm.
And when I hung up, I said, that's what I've been trying to say all the time. I didn't have to drive to that doctor's office. They could have asked me those questions and called my prescription in.
Exactly. So so it is a plus. It's a plus. However, we have to think about all of our policies and how it affects everyone. So
Hmm.
we have a segment of our population that may not have that computer with that camera or that smartphone that they'll be able to turn on. So now those people are subjected to have these devices. So that makes it cost prohibitive.
Hmm.
And we know that one of 10, the most recent report that I've seen, one of 10 Tennesseans have lost their health care because your health care is attached to your job.
Mm.
Now, remember, we had people get laid off,
Hmm.
furloughed. They're now drawing unemployment. Well, with that job also went their health care. So when we think about health care, we have to, think about it in its totality. Most of us, I know when I was working, my insurance was tied to my job, and most people that is the case. And not to mention that in District 26, we have 4 hospitals that have closed. And
Mm.
so not having access, and people talk a lot about, well, you don't need the hospital if you have doctors. Well, not you, it's rare to find many doctors where there's not a hospital.
Hmm.
So a lot of us have to travel to Memphis in order to see that specialist. Or so now, versus having them in-house or having doctor's hours at the hospital, then now you're now causing another hurdle for people to have to drive in order to have health care.
And an extension of that is emergency care.
Yes. Yes. And a lot of when our hospital closed here in Fayette County, the one thing everyone said was, can we have a stand up ER? Well, those things are great and wonderful, but there's something called a certificate of need, a CON,
Hmm.
that says how far a hospital or an emergency place can be from another hospital. So that creates yet another barrier for some of our cities and municipalities in our district.
Hmm.
So healthcare is a really big issue, and until our legislative body begins to address it for what it is, a priority. Public health is very important, especially during the pandemic, because one thing that we do know is that it is affecting certain populations more than others. And
Hmm.
so we know that it is affecting the Black population, Black people, uh, disproportionately.
Hmm.
One reason is they like to say comorbidities. And
Hmm.
so those are your diabetes, your heart challenges, and things of that nature. But I'll say that it's also affecting them because most of the Black folk we know are those essential workers.
That's right.
They work at Walmart and the places that remained open so that all of us could still live that life that
Hmm.
we wanted to live.
Hmm.
And so when we think about public health, healthcare being accessible and affordable, that's just not a buzzword. That's a necessity.
Hmm.
People need health care in order to remain healthy because it's only with a healthy population that our state can move.
Yeah. How do you think we're going to get back to a sense of healthy? What do you think when I look at where we are, I'm like, it seems simple to me. Why can't we look at what some of these other places have done to flatten the curve, and just, use best practices. What do you think? What do you think we can do to get back to some sense of health in the state of Tennessee alone?
Well, there has to be a willingness to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes from our governor all the way down to our neighbors.
Yeah.
There has to be this willingness to do the things that are necessary in order for us to flatten the curve, to mitigate the challenges, and to contain the virus.
Mm-hmm.
If we contain the virus, then we will be moving more toward healthy, and we'll be moving to having our economy come back, because people aren't going to go to places when they can't trust that the virus won't meet them there.
Mm-hmm.
That is a real concern. So the first thing that I believe that Tennessee needs to do is our governor just needs to mandate masks.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody wants to wear them. I don't want to wear them, but I know that I may be asymptomatic and I never show a sign. But I live with an 82-year-old woman,
Mm-hmm.
and I would not want to bring anything home
Mm-hmm.
that would cause her to have to suffer the consequences of COVID-19. I
Yeah.
didn't want to send my children to school because they're my kids. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that I'm not following all the rules, the social distancing with all my might. I try to stay away, but you're going to fist bump. I'm staying around people longer than the 10 minutes. I know it's been 15 minutes since I've been talking to you, and we should step back.
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing our state could do is definitely mandate masks. And then it's about contact tracing. And I asked for that to be on our school level as well. Because if we have one child who has COVID-19 and we want to quarantine that classroom, then what about if he has, like my children, there's 6 students in my house.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would have to quarantine 3 different classrooms in, with 6 different classrooms in 3 different schools, and then all of those other families. So not having guidelines. So mandating masks, contact tracing, and then one thing that was just brought to my attention is we have to support the people who have to be in quarantine.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of people who don't have anywhere to go. They can't, if they're quarantined, how does their family then survive? So a lot of smart governments have used public funds to isolate people who have the virus, either at home or in hotels. And you've heard about that throughout the country. So when you can't isolate at home, have somewhere for those people to go. And once again, just having a statewide plan to
Mm-hmm.
contain this virus, because it's not going away. It's
Yeah,
going to be with us until we decide, until we become willing
that's
to
right.
do what it takes.
Yeah, and that scenario that you used about your children, if one of them were to become infected with this particular virus and the ripple effect of that,
Mhm.
that's the reason I believe, and I mean, and I will always consider myself an educator. I believe that it was a better move to do the virtual schools
Mhm.
because, I mean, it's just too tedious to go from like every time somebody gets infected, then you got to quarantine for 14 days and you got to
Mhm.
quarantine everybody that they came in contact with. And then as you say, if you're doing the tracking, God only knows how many people have to go, and you keep going back and forth, back and forth. I think I just read an article today of a school system that started sometime this week, and they already have 116 kids that have been, infected by the virus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's real. And these are our little children. This is our future. And the one thing that I would ask our governor not to do is don't use our children as an experiment.
Mm.
They're not that. That's my precious. That's my blood. Those are my, that's what I am sowing into so that they can have a better life, not for them to be an experiment, and definitely not to spread information that children are immune to this virus. It's not that they're immune. They may not be as symptomatic as you and I might be,
Yeah.
but the fact that they can carry it too. And we have a lot of multi-generational households
Mm-hmm.
within our state. And
Mm-hmm.
so that baby may not suffer, but what about that aunt or that grandmother that they live with? So
Mm-hmm.
we have to be concerned with complete households and not just one person within that household.
Yeah. And I don't know what it is, and I think we may have touched on this last week too, but there are so many people, yeah, that don't want to wear masks, but there are also so many people that don't even consider this, they don't think it's real. And I've seen, I haven't literally seen, but I know of people that have actually passed away from the virus. I know of people that have that have been infected by this virus, and that did okay. I mean, they went through everything. They quarantined and they were okay, but they were infected with the virus. I know of people that have had family members pass away alone because of the impacts, the effects of this virus. It's real, and I don't know what we have to say. You talk about people not wanting to go places because they're afraid that well, people don't want to wear a mask or they're going to get infected, but I'm afraid most of the time because I'm like, it's so many people that just don't even think it's real.
Yes. And they tend to be, and I don't know what that is, but I know when you feel it, when it's affected you, when you know people who have either died, like you said, or
Mhm.
have suffered and recovered,
Mhm.
it puts you in another headspace.
Yeah.
You believe it. You know that it's real
Yeah.
because, as you know, my brother owns the funeral home there. And I pray for funeral directors
Yeah.
daily because of what they have to deal with. I don't, they're another part of those essential workers that we need to be concerned about because they are the ones consoling all of those families that have lost people. And not everybody is passing away of COVID-19. I know that.
Mhm.
But the ones that are, we know if the family shares with us, we know that what they have died of. And the fact that they do die alone sometimes. I can't imagine not being by the bedside of my loved one
Mhm.
to say goodbye or for them to feel comforted as they pass over to the other side. So I believe in the virus. I believe in masks. I believe that there should be a statewide mandate, contact tracing, rapid testing. The fact that it takes so long to get the test results back
Yeah.
is very mind-boggling to me.
Mhm.
There's just a lot that our state could be doing to make sure that we keep everybody safe and healthy.
Do you get a sense that the racial tension and the racial wars, and the political wars, do you get a sense that they work hand in hand? Um, if that question is clear.
I do. The one thing that we have to understand about our country is that no matter how much we want to believe otherwise, many of the things that have happened have been racial in nature. And I'm not trying to make anyone any better than the other, but we do know that there is systemic racism
No
and
doubt.
it touches every area from the economy, where Black women make less than anyone else when you compare it to white men and white women.
Hmm.
We know that Black people are found in jobs that are not the top paying jobs. We know that in in almost every arena, even when we talk about education, when
Hmm.
we talk about discipline, Black girls actually are disciplined disproportionately more than any other student.
Hmm.
Uh, when we talk about mothers giving birth, it's the Black woman who dies, once again, I'm going to use this word quite often, disproportionately more often than other new mothers.
Mhm.
So there are just systemic racial injustices that need to be addressed. And
Mhm.
as soon as not just our state, but our nation finally realizes that and begins to address it, we want to stay on criminal justice reform.
Mhm.
That's important.
Yeah,
But I want equal pay.
yeah,
I want equality in education.
that's
I
right.
want equality in healthcare. And so, inequality is justice. So, we want justice in all facets of life so that we can stop saying that Black people have the highest unemployment rate. We're still at 16%.
Mhm.
We haven't gone up, but we also haven't gone far enough down for us to really say that the economy is working on our behalf.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things we have to address.
Hmm. I think one of the things about jobs is that, even if unemployment, has gone down,
Mm-hmm.
I know too many people that it takes three jobs for them to even remotely live, even remotely. So if the quality of the jobs are not such that you can have a decent living, then what purpose has that served? When somebody has to work themselves to death, 24 hours a day just to try to make ends look at each other, let alone meet,
Thank you.
Yeah. um let's talk about community when we come back from break. We'll be right back on 94.7 FM.